Prince Harry sharing painful and deeply personal details of the family rift.
I don't think that we can ever have peace with my family unless the truth is out there.
A leaked audio and a so-called Yacht guest book about Meghan Markle is circulating online. It exposes her as Prince Andrew's paid companion. But in fact, there is no guest book, no recording. But it didn't appear out of nowhere. It draws on real tensions, a complicated relationship between Meghan Markle and Sarah Ferguson. So what's true? And how did rumor replace fact? Join us as we find out what's going on between Sarah Ferguson and Meghan Markle. Phantom recording no one can find. Online rumors claimed leaked audio of Sarah Ferguson revealing damaging secrets about Meghan Markle. The story spread fast because it sounded detailed and confident, but collapsed under scrutiny. No recording exists. No verified journalist has heard it. No reputable outlet reported it. The claim survives through repetition, not reality. Sarah Ferguson and Meghan Markle did know each other, and that small truth got twisted into fiction. When Prince Harry began dating Meghan in 2016, Ferguson was reportedly supportive. She was already experienced in life outside the royal spotlight and had endured years of tabloid pressure herself. Accounts place Ferguson among the early royal-adjacent figures who met Meghan informally before the engagement was announced. Meghan later mentioned that Ferguson helped her understand royal etiquette ahead of meeting Queen Elizabeth II, which suggested a moment of practical support rather than a close friendship. Ferguson attended Harry and Meghan's wedding in 2018 at St. George's Chapel, confirming there was a cordial relationship at that time. However, she was not invited to the private evening reception, revealing her limited standing within royal family dynamics. Over time, the distance grew. Reports from royal biographers described tensions surrounding family events later in 2018, including discomfort when Meghan's pregnancy news emerged during Princess Eugenie's wedding celebrations. This reflected strained family relationships, not scandal. By 2023, Ferguson publicly downplayed how well she knew Meghan, while still speaking politely about her and Harry. The timing of that distancing mattered. It came after Prince Harry's memoir criticized Prince Andrew, Ferguson's former husband. Loyalty lines inside the extended royal family hardened after that moment. Online conspiracy stories exploit these shifts. They take real changes in tone and turn them into imaginary confessions and secret evidence. Invented details are added to make the stories feel researched, even though no proof exists. When people search for sources, they find only recycled claims. The fabricated story included specific but unverifiable details designed to sound authentic. Claims mentioned a yacht party in 2016 and a guest book with Meghan's signature, but no such documentation has ever surfaced. The rumors also referenced a supposed recording from a private dinner in 2019, where Ferguson allegedly made explosive revelations. These invented specifics gave the story a veneer of credibility that encouraged sharing across social media platforms. The false narrative gained traction, partly because it played into existing public fascination with royal drama, and partly because it exploited genuine uncertainty about the nature of Ferguson and Meghan's relationship. Fact-checkers repeatedly debunked the claims, but the rumors persisted in certain online communities. What gets lost is the reality. Sarah Ferguson and Meghan Markle were never close allies or sworn enemies. Their relationship moved from early friendliness to polite distance, shaped by family politics, media pressure, and public scrutiny. If the yacht story is fiction, what's true? And how did it start with Ferguson? The £15,000 that cost Ferguson everything. In 2010, Ferguson was £5 million in debt when Jeffrey Epstein paid £15,000 to help settle money she owed a former assistant. Ferguson later admitted accepting the money was a serious mistake. More damaging was her continued contact with Epstein after his 2008 conviction for procuring a minor for prostitution. In 2011, she sent him an email calling him a friend, a connection that resurfaced years later with real professional consequences. In September 2025, Julia's House, a children's hospice charity where Ferguson had been a patron, severed ties with her after the 2011 email resurfaced. Charities that serve vulnerable children cannot risk association with someone linked to a convicted sex offender. Even decades of charitable work could not outweigh the reputational concerns. The situation intensified in December 2025, when the U.S. Department of Justice released documents known as the Epstein files. While victim faces were redacted, the files included photographs and other material that were damaging to both Ferguson and Prince Andrew. These documents reminded the public why Andrew had been largely sidelined from royal duties and further fueled scrutiny of Ferguson's connections. In October 2025, King Charles initiated formal proceedings to remove Andrew's remaining royal titles, including Duke of York, Earl of Inverness, and Baron Killyleagh. Ferguson, who had lived with Andrew at Royal Lodge for years after their 1996 divorce, found herself caught in the fallout, even though she was not directly accused of any wrongdoing. A royal biographer has noted that neither Ferguson nor Andrew plans to travel to the United States, largely to avoid potential legal entanglements or being compelled to testify before Congress about their relationship with Epstein. These events show why Ferguson's public statements are closely watched and why her relationships with other royals carry weight. Ferguson's acceptance of Epstein's money in 2010 came at a particularly vulnerable moment. She had been struggling to maintain her lifestyle after years of failed business ventures and mounting expenses. The £15,000 payment, though relatively small compared to her total debts, represented a lifeline she felt she couldn't refuse. However, the decision proved short-sighted. When details of the payment became public, Ferguson issued an apology, calling it a gigantic error of judgment. She claimed she had been in the thick of desperate financial troubles and hadn't fully considered the implications. The scandal damaged relationships with several royal family members who had previously supported her charitable endeavors. It also made corporate sponsors hesitant to associate with her projects. So when Ferguson first welcomed Meghan into the royal family in 2016, teaching her protocol and offering support, could she have possibly known their alliance would shatter within 2 years? The alliance that collapsed at a wedding. In October 2016, Prince Harry wanted someone in the royal family to meet Meghan Markle before the relationship became public, and he chose Sarah Ferguson. The meeting took place at Royal Lodge, where Ferguson, Harry, and Meghan had drinks together. The choice of Ferguson mattered because, despite her controversial status and past scrutiny from the media, Harry clearly trusted her judgment and felt she could provide guidance to Meghan. When Harry and Meghan announced their engagement in 2017, Ferguson was one of the few royals who publicly offered support. She stood out during a period when Meghan faced intense criticism and abuse from the British press and public. Ferguson's experience in handling media attention and royal expectations positioned her to help Meghan navigate a world that was new and often hostile. She helped Meghan learn the proper way to curtsy before meeting Queen Elizabeth II. Ferguson attended Harry and Meghan's wedding at St. George's Chapel in May 2018. She was present for the ceremony but was not invited to the evening reception at Frogmore House, hosted by Prince Charles. This exclusion reportedly upset Ferguson, exposing her continued outsider status within royal circles. Even after helping Meghan and supporting her publicly, Ferguson was still considered too controversial to be included in the most exclusive part of the celebration. A few months later, in October 2018, Princess Eugenie married Jack Brooksbank. Around the same time, Harry and Meghan informed family members that Meghan was pregnant. The couple took advantage of gatherings connected to Eugenie's wedding to share the news privately with close relatives before it became public. According to authors Omid Scobie and Carolyn Duran in Finding Freedom, the news did not go down particularly well with Eugenie, who reportedly felt that the couple should have waited to announce it. The public announcement came 3 days later, when Harry and Meghan arrived in Sydney for their royal tour. But the private revelations during the wedding created tension within the family. For Ferguson, the timing of the pregnancy announcement added another layer of complexity. She had worked to ensure that Eugenie's wedding was a smooth and memorable event, and she had publicly supported Meghan. From Ferguson's perspective, Meghan's private announcement during the wedding shifted focus away from Eugenie and her preparations, which may have contributed to underlying tensions. The wedding incident highlighted deeper issues within the royal family's communication dynamics. While Harry and Meghan followed protocol by informing family members privately before making a public announcement, the timing created an awkward situation for everyone involved. Eugenie had spent months planning her wedding, and the pregnancy news inevitably became a topic of conversation among guests who were aware of it. Sources close to the family suggested that a different timing, perhaps waiting until after the wedding festivities concluded, might have been more considerate. For Ferguson, who had invested considerable emotional energy in supporting both Meghan and her own daughter, the situation placed her in an uncomfortable position between competing loyalties and strained family relationships. The relationship cooled dramatically after that wedding, but when Ferguson made a shocking statement in 2023 claiming she barely knew Meghan, what was she really trying to say? "I don't really know Meghan." In March 2023, Sarah Ferguson told The Telegraph that she didn't know Meghan Markle and hadn't met her, though she did compliment Meghan's appearance at Queen Elizabeth II's funeral and said she was glad Harry was happy. On the surface, that statement seemed straightforward, but it directly contradicted years of previous reporting about their relationship. Ferguson had met Meghan in 2016 at Royal Lodge, when Prince Harry wanted someone in the royal family to meet her privately. She had coached Meghan on how to curtsy before meeting the Queen, attended Harry and Meghan's wedding in May 2018, and publicly offered support during a period when Meghan faced intense media scrutiny. The timing of Ferguson's statement is notable. It came 2 months after Prince Harry released his memoir Spare in January 2023, where he criticized the royal family's treatment of Prince Andrew. The memoir defended Andrew while simultaneously highlighting institutional failings within the monarchy. Ferguson, who had her own fraught history with Andrew and the royal family, may have been seeking to distance herself diplomatically from controversy while remaining publicly neutral. Parallels emerge between Meghan's media ventures and Ferguson's post-royal career. Ferguson had written children's books, hosted television programs, and engaged in media projects to remain visible after stepping back from active royal duties. Both women worked with Oprah Winfrey on major projects, using media as a way to shape public perception outside the confines of royal life. Despite these similarities, Ferguson insisted in 2023 that she and Meghan were strangers. That apparent contradiction reflects the complexity of royal relationships. Initial warmth and mentorship can give way to distance as personal dynamics collide with institutional pressures, family loyalties, and public scrutiny. Ferguson welcomed Meghan and guided her in important moments, but over time, the interactions did not develop into a deep, personal bond. From 2016 to 2023, the relationship shifted from mentorship to public distance. Ferguson's 2023 statement to The Telegraph surprised many royal observers who had documented her earlier interactions with Meghan. Some interpreted the remarks as an attempt to protect herself from association with ongoing controversies surrounding Harry and Meghan's departure from royal life. Others saw it as Ferguson carefully navigating her own precarious position within the family hierarchy. By claiming minimal connection to Meghan, Ferguson could avoid being drawn into debates about the Sussexes' allegations of racism and mistreatment within the institution. The statement also came during a period when Ferguson was attempting to rehabilitate her public image after the Epstein scandal. Distancing herself from another controversial royal figure may have seemed strategically prudent, even if it contradicted documented history. But personal relationships were about to become the least of Ferguson's problems. King Charles had issued an ultimatum that would force Ferguson to make a desperate choice, and the palace had no idea what she was planning. Royal Lodge eviction and Ferguson's options. In late October 2025, King Charles formally ordered Prince Andrew to leave the 30-room Windsor mansion where he had lived for more than 2 decades. Royal insiders had described the situation as the Siege of Royal Lodge, with Andrew and Sarah Ferguson hoping the family might let them remain. Charles, however, was determined to remove them, ending any ambiguity about their residency. By December 2025, the eviction deadline was confirmed, January 31, 2026. Andrew was expected to move to a private property on the Sandringham estate, funded privately by King Charles. Ferguson, meanwhile, was looking for a home of her own and focusing on rebuilding her career after years of financial instability. Ferguson's financial situation had long been precarious. When she divorced Andrew, her settlement was relatively modest compared with other royal divorces, and she had maintained a lifestyle that often outpaced her means. Over the years, she accumulated significant debt, and her ongoing expenses continued to shape her decisions. Reports varied on where Ferguson might live. Some media outlets suggested she could move into a grand suite in Princess Eugenie's Portuguese mansion, prepared by Eugenie and her husband, Jack Brooksbank. Other sources, however, indicated that Ferguson preferred to establish her own household, funded with support from both daughters and their spouses, rather than living with either of them. Meanwhile, Andrew and Ferguson were excluded from the royal family's annual Christmas celebrations at Sandringham in December 2025, while Beatrice and Eugenie attended with their families. Instead, Andrew and Ferguson spent the holidays together at Royal Lodge, marking another period of separation from the wider family. Around the same time, Ferguson was reportedly removing her personal diaries from Royal Lodge, with speculation that she might use them as the basis for a memoir. Sources suggested she was weighing options for a bukiki or an in-depth interview, and she was actively open to offers from publishers and television networks. Industry observers estimated a potential deal could be worth millions, helping Ferguson secure her financial position after years of uncertainty. The Royal Lodge property itself had become a symbol of Ferguson's ambiguous status within the royal family. The 30-room mansion, originally built in the 17th century and later expanded, had been Andrew's official residence since 2004 under a 75-year lease from the Crown Estate. Ferguson moved back in with him in 2008, despite their divorce more than a decade earlier. Their unusual living arrangement, divorced but cohabiting, had long puzzled observers and complicated the family's efforts to manage Andrew's public image. The property required expensive maintenance that Andrew struggled to afford, and King Charles viewed the eviction as part of broader efforts to streamline royal expenses and reduce the number of properties occupied by non-working royals. For Ferguson, losing access to Royal Lodge meant losing her last tangible connection to official royal life. With the Royal Lodge eviction approaching and Ferguson weighing her next moves in publishing and media, the coming months promised to be pivotal for both women, each navigating a unique but highly visible chapter in their lives. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And Ferguson's next move would send shockwaves through the royal family. Christmas cards and Ferguson's final stand. In December 2025, palace sources reported that Sarah Ferguson sent Christmas cards that were widely described as unusually effusive and almost pleading. The cards appeared designed to smooth over lingering tensions caused by Prince Andrew's friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Analysts observed the tone of the cards was excessive, with some characterizing them as over-the-top, suggesting Ferguson was trying to reconnect with family members who had largely frozen her out. Most notably, Ferguson sent a card to King Charles and Queen Camilla, the monarch who had stripped both Ferguson and Andrew of their royal titles earlier in the year and recently evicted them. Ferguson was sending a message of reconciliation weeks after documents known as the Epstein files had been released, including photographs and records that were damaging to both her and Andrew. The public and the royal family were aware of the fallout from these files. Yet Ferguson's card suggested she was hoping a holiday greeting could somehow reset her standing. Ferguson has remained close enough to feel the effects of family decisions while never regaining influence. Ferguson has consistently been affected by royal events but has little control over them, leaving her in a position where she can be discarded or ignored at key moments. Her public presence and continued efforts to maintain ties illustrate how intertwined her identity has been with being royal adjacent. The situation also involved Ferguson's daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie. While neither is a working royal, both maintain connections with their cousins, William and Harry, and navigate public expectations carefully. Ferguson's repeated attempts to regain favor with the senior royals add another layer of complication for them, as they must balance family loyalty with the desire to maintain dignified, low-profile lives. Ferguson's gestures, including the Christmas cards, indirectly placed her daughters in the middle of ongoing scrutiny and occasional embarrassment. The cards represented Ferguson's persistent belief that personal gestures could overcome institutional decisions. Palace sources described the messages as heartfelt but misguided, suggesting Ferguson genuinely believed warm holiday wishes could soften the stance King Charles had taken toward her and Andrew. The cards reportedly included handwritten notes expressing gratitude for past support and hope for future reconciliation. However, senior royals viewed the gesture as tone-deaf, given the gravity of the Epstein scandal and its ongoing reputational damage to the monarchy. Some family members reportedly found the cards uncomfortable to receive, as they created an obligation to respond to someone the institution had effectively distanced itself from. The incident illustrated Ferguson's inability to accept that certain bridges had been permanently burned. The palace ignored the Christmas cards, but Ferguson had something they couldn't ignore: decades of diaries, and she was ready to talk. The memoir threat and what Ferguson knows. In early 2026, sources reported that Sarah Ferguson was retrieving personal materials to compile a potential tell-all memoir about her time in the royal family and her life with Prince Andrew. Over the years, Ferguson had documented many aspects of her life in diaries and notes, and insiders suggested she was quietly moving these materials to use as the foundation of a book. Ferguson was reportedly open to offers from both publishers and television networks, aiming for a substantial payday that could reach £10 million, while also attempting to restore some measure of public credibility after years of financial and personal setbacks. Ferguson had published My Story, appeared on Oprah Winfrey's programs, and starred in the 2011 reality series Finding Sarah. But this new project would be different. By 2026, Ferguson had lost nearly all the influence and protection she once had. She had been stripped of titles, evicted from Royal Lodge, dropped by charities, and largely excluded from family events. The timing of this potential memoir coincided with a period of significant upheaval in the royal family. King Charles had formally removed Prince Andrew's remaining royal titles and evicted him and Ferguson from Royal Lodge. Andrew was moving to a private property on the Sandringham estate, funded by the monarch, while Ferguson was searching for her own residence and exploring ways to secure financial stability. Beatrice and Eugenie, Ferguson's daughters, were navigating these changes as well, maintaining relationships with cousins William and Harry, while trying to avoid the public scrutiny that came with their parents' controversies. Meanwhile, Meghan expanded her post-royal platform through Lemonada Media's Archetypes podcast relaunch, Archewell Foundation initiatives, and carefully controlled media projects, a stark contrast to Ferguson's reactive scramble for relevance. A memoir could reveal decades of witnessed events during the Epstein scandal and how decisions were made about Andrew's public positioning. She lived in proximity to the unfolding events, and insiders suggested she could provide insight into private conversations and internal family dynamics. For King Charles, the situation presented a dilemma. Cutting Ferguson off completely could encourage her to publish everything, while offering support or housing might be seen as effectively paying for her silence. Ferguson's position in 2026 was unusual. She had almost no remaining official leverage or royal privileges, yet by possessing first-hand knowledge of sensitive events, she had acquired a kind of informal leverage she had never held before. At the same time, Meghan was carving out an independent, controlled path in media and advocacy, showing how different approaches to post-royal life could play out under public scrutiny. Ferguson's potential memoir, the palace's concerns about its contents, and the broader context of royal changes all set the stage for a critical turning point in how these long-standing royal relationships would continue to unfold. As Ferguson weaponizes her insider knowledge and Meghan builds her California empire, what does the future hold for two women who left the monarchy? Two women, two paths, separate futures. By early 2026, the contrast between Sarah Ferguson and Meghan Markle's post-royal trajectories was stark. Lemonada Media confirmed that Meghan's Archetypes podcast would return with new episodes after its 2023 Spotify run ended. At the same time, Meghan had expanded her media presence, launching a Netflix series called With Love, Meghan, and an Instagram account to highlight her lifestyle brand. These moves built on the work she had begun after leaving the UK in 2020, including relocating to California, creating the Archewell Foundation, and securing Netflix deals. Meghan and Harry had deliberately stepped away from active royal life, establishing independent careers without attempting to straddle the monarchy and private life at the same time. Ferguson's path was very different. Since her divorce from Prince Andrew in 1996, she had repeatedly tried to remain relevant through royal connections. She had written more than a dozen books, appeared on numerous talk shows and reality series, and engaged in charitable work whenever opportunities arose. But Ferguson never developed a public identity separate from the monarchy. Sources describe her as a fighter, and royal biographer Robert Jobson noted that she had been in serious debt for decades, never receiving a financial settlement comparable to other royals, such as Princess Diana. Ferguson survived scandals through persistence, but persistence could not overcome the formal rejection she faced from King Charles and the family. By late 2025, the royal family was navigating several ongoing issues. Andrew had been stripped of titles and evicted, and Ferguson faced the same forced departure. Both had been excluded from family events like the annual Sandringham Christmas gathering, while their daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, maintained low-profile connections with cousins William and Harry. Reports highlighted frustration with Andrew for appearing in public, despite the family's wish for discretion. Ferguson's future, meanwhile, appeared tied to media projects, books, and a potential memoir, but she no longer influenced within royal circles. The so-called Yacht guest book and leaked audio about Meghan were entirely fictional. No evidence existed, and the stories relied on invented details like Captain X and fabricated documents. The real events, however, were documented and consequential. Ferguson had accepted money from Jeffrey Epstein in 2010 to settle debts, faced eviction from Royal Lodge, sent Christmas cards that palace insiders described as overly effusive, and experienced a relationship with Meghan that shifted from mentorship to distance. These were verified facts with lasting implications. Ferguson was scheduled to vacate by January 31, 2026, ending decades of living arrangements tied to her marriage. She was scrambling to secure housing, preparing her diaries for a potential memoir, and sending messages to family members who had made it clear she was no longer welcome. Meanwhile, Meghan continued building her California-based projects and media presence, having fully separated from the royal institution. Ferguson spent 30 years trying to remain relevant within the monarchy and struggled to define herself outside it. Meghan made a decisive exit in 5 years and established a new career. For some, the separation is almost impossible. Others navigate it strategically. Do you think Sarah Ferguson will publish a tell-all memoir, or is she bluffing? Between Ferguson's strategy of staying close to royals for decades and Meghan's clean break, which approach do you think was smarter for life after the palace? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.